When I graduated and I worked at the Bronx, my take was I'm going to work in this industry as long as I can. And I'll work at a sports tech company when I'm old. Seeing things from the other side and seeing the way technology in sport has gone, where there is just so much technology out there, I think you can kind of go the other way now as well. Every time I talk to that high performance manager, it's always about having the right cultural and personality fit, where that person has to be able to fit in with the language and the directness and the working culture. And it's never been necessarily about just pure experience. To be honest, when I worked at the Broncos, I didn't really know many people, and it was really hard to have this almost free shot at networking where some of our prospects or clients, feel comfortable talking to you because they know that you're here to help them.
Another Working in Sport podcast. Today's guest is Carolyn Seng, not Caroline Seng, Carolyn Seng. Kaz is a graduate of the University of Queensland where she studied sports science. She worked with the Brisbane Broncos rugby league team for 3.5 years as a football analyst, which is where I briefly met her. I became close with Kaz and worked closely with her during her time and my time at Smarterbase or Fusion Sport. Kaz remained on at Smarterbase and Fusion Sport after it was acquired by Teamworks. Kaz works closely with the professional sporting teams, military organizations, and Olympic committees that utilize the Teamworks/Smarterbase technology as a consultant there at Teamworks. Kaz is a driven individual, a committed individual, gives everything 100%. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I think it's going to be very, very helpful for those that are looking to transition from pro sport into working in technology, or the ones that are working in technology and want to transition back into pro sport. Beyond that, there's a lot of tidbits there and advice about the industry at large. It's a great conversation. Before we get into that, today's show is brought to you by JTG Media. JTG Media, sales, conversions, and marketing experts. If you or one of your friends has a business and you would like to grow that business online, JTG Media with their sales and marketing consultancy can help you do so. The link below is there for JTG Media. Again, JTG Media, sales, marketing, and conversion experts. Let's get on with the show.
When I was thinking about what to speak to you about, the first thing that came to my mind was the switch between the pro sport and coming into sports tech. But the first thing that came to mind is that you're someone that always has a finger on the pulse. Like, doesn't matter in
Right.
committed and driven and live. Besides being a kick enthusiast, you live and breathe sport, and not only in a fan way, you'll know what's going on with ins and outs and injuries and events, where are they taking place and whatnot, but also obviously because of your industry knowledge, the inner workings of sport. I'd always be like, oh, Kaz, I'm talking to such and such. What are the stupid things that I can't say? Why is that just something that you've always been, that's just come naturally to you? Or was it always a concerted effort to be oh, I want to be someone that has my finger on the pulse and I want to know these things? Are you on news sites every day, sort of just checking what's going on? What's the drive behind being a encyclopedia of the industry?
Do you mean from a networking point of view kind of thing?
Well, it's both. You seem very committed and driven to being a practitioner and knowing what's happening inside the practitioner world, but also from a network world, but then also from just the general happenings of sport. That seems to be, and I was thinking about it, I was committed and driven seems to be the language best used to describe your application to those, the practitioner part, the networking part, all of that. Is that something you're
I love.
You're practicing, or it just comes naturally?
I think that's the committed and driven part is an innate thing that you have inside of you, and you either have it or you don't. And we talk about this, right? Is there are people who do their 9 to 5 and they're really happy doing that, and they go home and spend time with their family and whatever. But I've always been someone who just wants to be a part of something and wants that little bit more, and is always committed to striving for something greater and bigger and contributing and adding value. I think that's in my DNA, but I also think working in pro sport has helped grow that as well. Working in that professional environment and wanting to drive towards that goal of winning a premiership, for example, or winning just that game, whatever it is, you can kind of apply that, or I've applied that in different areas of my life, like buying a house. a stupid thing still hasn't settled, right? But like for the last 2 years, I've done everything I possibly can to make sure I land it right, which is making sure that I'm talking to the right people, doing the right research, whatever. It's kind of like, doing whatever is necessary to win. And funnily enough, it's like the new Teamworks, like, we obviously just got acquired by Teamworks. That's their motto. And a lot of their core values align with some of the values that I think I've brought as well in the past to Smarterbase. So that's kind of really cool.
Oh, yeah. So the true company employee there. That's awesome.
Oh, the networking side you just asked about as well. Like,
yeah.
Big Smarterbase, like in a way, gave both of you and I that opportunity, right? Like we got to talk to every single person in the APAC region, if not globally at times. And I think like-minded people get along pretty well, and there'll be some BDMs that we've worked with that just doesn't quite click as well as maybe you've seen it click for me with some people in the industry when I meet them for the first time. But there's just like this other language that you kind of just pick up and you get to like bond with that other person. And from there, I've been able to grow my network. But to be honest, when I worked at the Broncos, like I didn't really know many people, and it was really hard to have this like almost like free shot at networking where some of our prospects or clients, feel comfortable talking to you because they know that you're here to help them. Whereas like, when you're in a rival team, people aren't probably as open or feel a bit nervous about connecting and sharing.
Right. So was that one of the things, did you see that as a advantage not an advantage, that's probably not the right word, but did you see that as an opportunity when for your like professional development when you came from the Bronx after being an analyst there for 4 years?
Right about.
4 or 5. Was that one of the things that you thought, okay, moving into sports tech now, there's an opportunity here for me to really grow my network because of what you just said? Or was it something that you just sort of like, as time went by, you went, oh, that's actually a really good opportunity that I need to take more advantage of?
Yeah, I think like a bit of both, hey. Like at the start, I was probably like, man, this is just my job now. And I think I was fighting like hell to get back into pro sport. But I think along the way, you kind of realize you have this like really unique opportunity to influence as someone from pro sport. And at that time or that point in time, there weren't many people, if any, who'd had come from pro sport and could actually influence sales, product decisions, all of that, and really share that experience and help the team empathize and really understand like what ideas they're coming up with and how that actually translates into the product and how that affects the end user. So that was really cool. And the networking thing, I think, just came in time. Like better you are at your job, the more clients you pick up, the more people you connect with, the more people they recommend you to, and it just kind of naturally goes from there, I guess.
How is working in the sports tech world rather than being at a club change your perspective on the industry?
The sport industry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for people who work in pro sport and haven't connected to many people, like you'd be probably surprised at how similar everyone is in a way, or the shared experiences everyone has. Like, me leaving pro sport, not necessarily by choice. I've met so many other people like me who've, maybe come out, went back in, or even come out and stayed out as well. Like, it's really cool. And everyone has this like shared thing they can connect on and talk about their experience. And that's kind of cool. I don't feel like it's changed my perspective per se though, but I have seen like there is such a good opportunity for people in pro sport if they do want maybe a little bit more work-life balance. And I say a little bit more very, very, very specifically. There's so much value they can add in this area. It's more if they would like to as well.
What were some of the things that you didn't expect from like you obviously trusted your ability, you were a product user before you started working for Smarterbase, but what were some of the things that you thought were going to be skills that you had under your belt, or some of the more surprises when you started working in a sports tech environment, which is probably not as, it's more close to just working for a software company rather than working for a pro sporting team. Like there's no way to even though you're a sports scientist who worked in a pro sport team, there's no way to think, oh, this sports tech company is going to be like a pro team. It's going to be more like a software company. What were some of the like adjusting periods or adjusting things you might tell yourself when you rolled into work?
I think there's some cultural things, right? And I feel like you would have experienced this, like selling to teams is like when you're back, it's like coming back into the real world. Like I used to work in retail at Apple while I was working at Broncos when I was a student. And I think when you're a pro sport for long enough, you kind of almost forget what it's like to work in a normal business. So that's like the way you speak. Like I would have pissed a lot of people off at the start, and I know I did. And I was very direct to my communication. And, you know, in sport, everyone knows, you know, you're all working together for this goal is to win a premiership or whatever competition you're in. And when you're transitioning to the tech world, those wins are a bit different. And that empathy and understanding and connection that you actually have to build with people and rapport for you to almost earn the right to be that direct was an interesting learning curve for me. Like, I definitely know I came in, I was like, oh, you know, this sucks or whatever it is. And you know, my this sucks is, oh, you know, this sucks because I want it to be better for all of us, not this sucks and you suck and whatever. And that was hard. Like, I think it took me about like a year for people to actually respect me and understand every time it came from a good place, and actually start hearing me. And once I got there, it was amazing, but it was definitely a bit of a struggle at the start.
I encourage like the mates that we have that work in sports tech to still keep the skill sharp. And like when you've had a few experiences with Queensland Rugby League in various roles to still keep the skill sharp, why is it important for you to keep to keep dipping back into the pro sporting role while working in technology?
Yeah, I think this kind of applies to for those who know or understand the smarter based model of consulting. Keeping a client in a way as well, keeping some currency. It's being able to still understand what's out there and what's trending and how you can actually influence from inside in this company to better serve those teams or organizations or military organizations that we're working with. Because I think after a while, you kind of lose that value if you're not practicing in some way over time. Like that's going to happen in any industry, isn't it?
Yeah, so I thought when you're saying like keeping a client, obviously you're servicing QRL. It's like, oh yeah, well I needed to go do footy analyst work just to get, but you're more saying like
kind of both.
Well, yeah, but for the service of your clients, keeping not being someone who just knows Smarterbase, but knowing.
Yeah, like knowing the industry, knowing what things people are starting to look at, and what kinds of like new research people are looking into. I do know also from, I guess, working in a tech company as well, we might get feedback from clients, but trying to put this into words in the right way. We might get feedback from clients and we might let's say we just did that feedback. Like, what do they say? Like, I want you to build this new module. But we may not understand why they want that or be able to really dig into that and kind of see that trend in the industry to like give it the right priority and context. And yeah, having an idea of what's still going on and practicing and keeping a kind of finger in that pie still, I think is so beneficial. And I guess from the flip side, we have a lot of consultants here, for example, or people who work in product and tech who've never experienced the pro sports side. And that link with QRL has been able to give me that opportunity to get them into that environment too, right? And experience that.
Yeah, so it's really like a win-win-win. Like there's multiple. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I tossed this up in my own mind about because I hadn't graduated sports science, but I was studying sports science and was doing some internship and then went into sports tech. Never got to this the other day. I never actually got to put the jumper on. Like I might have like a few bits of kit, but never the proper kit. You know, I never got to put on the NRL jersey or the AFL jersey or whatever it may be. But for my own journey, this is why I grapple with it. For my own journey, I feel like it was okay to roll into sports tech, and then now on the other side of having worked in a sports tech company, it's it's been okay. It was good to get the networking, good to work close to the industry, and my career path's going slightly different. But what I'm there is like for people that just like they want to be sports scientists and they want to work for clubs, like that's their passion. They're not gonna get distracted by shiny things like I did. Do you think that working at a sports tech company is beneficial? And more importantly, like at what stage? If you think it is beneficial, like at what stage of the journey? Because you were saying, I think, you were saying at the time for Smarterbase, and I think for a lot of sports tech companies, they don't have that internal voice that has worked in clubland for 4-5 years, and how important that was and how crucial that was. But yeah, I'm just curious from your perspective, like, would you say it is beneficial to work to come from clubland into sports tech, or would you even like go straight out of uni into sports tech and then parlay that into more industry contacts? Like, what's your take on that?
Oh, it's such a hard question. I feel like when I graduated and I worked at the Bronx, my take was I'm going to work in this industry as long as I can. And I'll work at a sports tech company when I'm old. Because I, at the time, went, I don't want a desk job. I want this like 24/7 striving for something greater job. And then life happens, and I ended up here and seeing things from the other side and seeing the way technology in sport has gone, where there is just so much technology out there. I think you can kind of go the other way now as well.
Yeah.
Like there actually could be some merit, and we've seen it in the industry recently of people who've worked at that hardware or software company and actually landed a job at a team, because now they have this unique skill set that actually adds value. So I feel like it's not just one way anymore. You could do either way. To work in a sports tech company though, and be in a role like I used to be in, a very like a consulting role, I do think it's highly valuable to have industry knowledge, whether that's just an internship, if that's what you can do, or you work in pro sport for a couple of years. That's always going to be more valuable. But in terms of like if you're gunning for a job in pro sport, I think I've seen people go both ways now.
Yeah, you're 100% right, because there's the phrase, the sports tech world was kind of thought of, oh, if I get the flick, if I'm at a club and I'm going to go there, or when I'm old, I'm going to go there. But now, because of how networked it is, how almost like at the epicenter of a lot of the high performance activities in some cases it is, it can really become a vehicle for people to roll on from sports tech into clubland. What I'm interested about though is like someone goes from uni to sports tech and then out to clubland, whether they're the directness or some of the skills that you need to have in clubland. Like I think there would be I think there'd be more of a culture shock going from sports tech into clubland than there would be from clubland into sports tech.
Yeah, definitely. If you're coming from sports tech, clubland to sports tech, I feel like you've almost got a bit of the experience and clout to get away with the cultural adjustment, where there's a bit of a softer landing, right? People are going to be more willing to not cop or accept, but they're probably going to be a bit more okay with understanding, you've come from this high pressure environment and you're here to win, that kind of thing. Whereas going back the other way, and I've seen it recently, had the privilege of helping some fresh graduates land jobs at clubs in the last year. Every time I talk to that high performance manager, it's always about having the right cultural and personality fit, where that person has to be able to fit in with the language and the directness and the working culture, and pick that up really quickly. It's never been necessarily about just pure experience. Like if they're not a good cultural fit, it's just never going to work. And yeah, like you said, I think it would be very difficult to kind of transition from that sports tech world in without a really steep learning curve. I would say certain leagues are probably a bit more professional, where that's probably not as big of a deal, but there's a huge cultural aspect to it.
As someone, and knowing you as well, like you speak quite glowingly of the technology space, now has that viewpoint of I'm going to go to a sports tech company when I'm old changed in that? Do you see yourself going to club and then maybe coming back to tech and going to club and coming back to tech? Like, do you see that pathway now kind of including both?
I feel like COVID changed that a bit, hey? Like,
So true.
yeah, over COVID, seeing so many co-workers or colleagues get rinsed out of clubs because they just couldn't hold on to them financially. That was tough. Hey, I think there was a bit of a shift that happened where people were like, I want a better work-life balance, and I want to find a job elsewhere where I have a bit more stability. I can look after my family. Like me, I want to buy a house.
Yeah.
My wage at the Broncos, probably obviously wasn't as pretty as it is now working in sports tech, and that's a bonus of having a regular job. When you work for a team, unless you're at that complete upper end, ahead of performance or whatever, your earning potential won't be as good. I can't say will be as good, or job security won't be as good necessarily as working in sports tech, where you can have something regular and a bit more security.
Yeah, the industry standards are just different. Like we were saying before, sports tech is still more closely linked to tech rather than it being sport. Yeah. You're mentioning
supply and demand, right? Like when I was an analyst, there's probably a bajillion analysts who want to be the analyst for the Broncos, or, obviously my mentor, Scott Barker as well, who was probably, there was a million people who would want that job just as much as you do. And, if you there was always this kind of feeling of like, if you're not happy with your pay, well, there'll be someone to replace you, and everyone's disposable and replaceable at the end of the day. So it's really up to you to make the most of it, kind of thing. That's how I always felt.
This links into one of my last questions, but I think your network, especially down here, is like, I don't think you'd be doing much cold outreach anymore to network. That's my interpretation, given that you've got. But if you had to, what would be your approach? Like, how would you get someone not from a sales pitch point of view, but like a genuine, maybe it's advice, or maybe it's something not related to the commercial happenings of Smarter for Teamworks, but how would you go about reaching out to someone nowadays and getting their attention?
I think it's just like a catch up. Hey, like, I think it's as nice as literally get to know catch up with maybe a light discussion on seeing where they're at and kind of how they're tracking. And that's all it has to be. Yeah. I don't believe in like the hard sell at all. And I think that as well. I also think working at Apple taught me a lot about the product. Like, I think people from Clubland, if they come and work in sports tech, like, you probably want to really believe in that product, right? Like, you believed in the team that you were working for. And if you don't believe in that product, you're probably not going to enjoy working at that company or getting the same like value or feeling that you get when you work for a team, or that feeling that you're part of something greater. So that's been a bonus, right? Like, I genuinely believe that the product I work with is the best. And I think that translates well to clients. So I think all it has to be, that first touch point, is a bit of a rapport build, getting to know them. And at the very least, you walk away with this network and new connection. At the most, it's a lead if you work in sales. I think that's like an important point to touch on, is like, if you believe your product is the best, then you'll kind of do the talking for you. You don't need to posture or say anything, because at the end of the day, especially if you've come from Clubland, you'll understand this, is that product has to do what you're going to say it's going to do, and it has to be able to genuinely add value to that team or that client or that military client. And if it doesn't, then you should walk away, because you're going to do yourself and that person a disservice by selling it to them, and no one's going to be happy at the end of the day. And yeah, we learned that we learned that many times over.
Yes, we might have. What you mentioned helping people, helping young graduates get into roles. What are some of the advice that you're telling them? And if you were to, what are some of the advice that you're saying to them? And then even what would be something you would say to someone who's considering like that little swap, that mid-career swap between either sports tech to pro sport or pro sport to sports tech? Two-part question. And if there's similar advice, then obviously apply it to both. But what are you saying to those people that you were sort of mentoring through getting their first gigs in sport? And what would you say to anyone that is thinking of making that career switch?
I think from like the student point of view, maybe I'm a bit old school, and I think Scotty Barker has definitely driven some of these, and because I experienced it from him, is like this is such a small industry, and when you're interning at an organization or you're reaching out to an organization, people do talk and give references. So you need to put your best foot forward every single day and turn up as best you can, and have the best attitude of wanting to ask questions and just learn and suck in as much as you possibly can. Because yeah, I've seen a lot of students where they haven't quite like understood that, which has been really interesting. And whether that's the next generation of students or maybe just by luck, but I think that's so important. Like, yeah, wanting to have that drive to really impress and really put your best foot forward, because that translates so well when you're in clubland and you're seeing a student just go that extra mile more because they want it. And you know what? If you want it just that much more and you put in the hard yards, like that person, if they don't create a role in their organization for you, they'll do exactly what's happened in the last year. They'll reach out to someone like me and say, or I might reach out to them and say, hey, I've been talking to this team. They're not even a client, but they have this role. Do you have anyone suitable? And you're going to be at the top of their list, right? They'll recommend you, and that's your link, that's your network. You know, it doesn't have to be you reaching out directly, but if you make a good impression, then that's all it has to be. Just a little bit of luck and hard work on your end. So yeah, put your best foot forward. What was your second question? I actually forgot.
The advice that you said to someone who's looking at that mid-career switch from sports tech to pro sport, or the other way.
Just think about what matters to you. I think that's the biggest thing. When I left sport, I realized probably that I was neglecting a lot of my family and friends and not being able to spend time. Like everyone knows that's kind of the trade-off, and that was kind of nice to like reappreciate them in a way and remember how much they mean to me. And that was a big positive for me in my life. And yeah, like if you are looking for stability and but yeah, you still want to be something part of something bigger and greater, then just make sure you look for the right company that suits your values and the right product, because you're probably not going to have a good time if you go and work for the first tech company that picks you up but you don't believe in their product. And you'll also know, like, you know a lot of people in the industry. So if you have to sell to them or you're in a sales role in particular, you'll have a miserable time. Like it's not going to be for you. But there's so much room for people in the industry. And obviously now Teamwork's acquired Smarterbase, so I'm getting to see this really cool cultural shift where Teamworks, they tend to lean towards only hiring people from the industry. Like that's been really cool to see, and how much of a difference that makes in a lot of different areas. So yeah, working with a lot of people who are more like-minded or speak like me as well, which has been really cool.
Well, it's been a long time coming for us to actually have this chat. We've spoken about like this series for a little while.
Yeah.
And I thought now was a good time, given obviously I'm no longer working with you, no longer colleagues. So thanks for jumping on. Thanks for your advice from Apple to Broncos to Smarterbase and Teamworks. Like I said, the main thing that I see from you is just like an absolute commitment and tenacity to really understand the industry and always putting your best foot forward. So thank you. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me. And yeah, all the friends I've made along the way at different clients, like that's probably been the most rewarding part of it. Like I know if I ever leave here or move on or whatever, like got this like awesome network of people that I've met and worked with along the way that, yeah, got to add value to their organization. And that's probably the most rewarding part of it. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.